Hello, this character I'll be doing a demonstration in ClipStudioPaint on nested animation. This is for the ClipStudio Tips of the Month for 2021 for keyframe animation, with the subcategory being camera work. Unfortunately, nested animation is a very, very large subject, so camera work itself will be sidelined for pretty much the entire tutorial. Unfortunately, I fit in a little bit of camera animation, 2D camera animation. So I guess I'll cover that first because that will explain help explain what's going on with this animation here. So you can see this is my overall animation for this magic circle. So camera folder, animation, new animation layer, 2D camera folder. Hit that, create a new camera. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. So in order for a camera to work, you need to have layers within it, and basically what the camera will do is it will reference what is within the folder and then project that onto your stage or your canvas based on how the camera is framing the contents that are contained within the folder. So right now we have this the camera framing everything at almost the same size, so we will go ahead and change that. Let me go ahead and sorry, my laptop is being a little slow. Alright, so we will go ahead and change that. Right now I have playback setting render 2D camera, so it will when your 2D camera is rendering, it will actually render out your animation for the camera. So you can see how the camera was up close for the first frame and then it sort of zoomed out. So I will undo that because I want to have this nice regular spinning circle animation. So there. So that's one of the features of the camera folder. And then if I do this, disable render 2D camera, it will only, you will see this blue frame that's moving, that is our camera animation. And then whatever is within it is playing as it should be without being moved by the camera. So yes, this has some practical application and other places where it is not quite as useful. Anyhow, nested animation. So the first definition for nested animation that I will cover is a more generic, more practical definition. And that would be animation that is contained within another animation. So as you saw earlier, we had these spinning gears and the snowflake animations moving along with the circle rotating. So this animation right here would be considered to be nested within the larger animation of the full circle turning by the more practical definition of animation contained within an animation. So that's definition one. The other definition is animation that is not represented on the timeline. And this is it is definitely not a vague definition, but is a bit obscure. So basically here's our gear, one of our gears, and we have it moving along the timeline. You can see our keyframe here. You can see the rotation that's actually happening along the timeline. By the second definition, this would not be considered nested animation. And that is incredibly awkward for some people. So more likely than not, people will be using the first definition with animation that is contained within animation rather than the animation that is not represented on the timeline. So within this file, there is actually an example of proper nested animation, true to the second definition of animation that's not represented on the timeline. So here's our Snowflake file. Here's our Snowflake file. I'll just go ahead and play that. So you can see the snowflake is rotating here, yes. And there are no keyframes along this timeline. So there is no animation that is contained within this little segment. So I'm actually going to just switch out the file right now, real quickly, to another file. I believe it should be. Oh, I guess it registered as a movie file. Or it will only take in. Yeah, this one is now registered to only accept movie files and ClipStudioPaint files. So I'm just going to throw in this random clock hand, which I guess is not very visible. It is not visible at all. Hopefully. But yeah, so in theory, if I switch out the file, if I could switch out the file with something static, I guess it's not functioning. It does not allow the interaction between animated file into non-animated, so slight problem there. But in theory, if I switch it out for a static file, it would be a static image. But apparently I can't do that, so file object, movie file object with movie file object only. Feels bad. Alright. So that's our technical definition. So moving on, I guess I should talk about. So I'm just going to go through all these bookkeeping items. So if you have experience with the program, you're more likely than not going to be able to do whatever it is from this example and all the bookkeeping items I'm talking about. Be able to make your own animation, nested animation. So right here, Snowflake file, object selection tool, select your file, tool properties. You have four options. Change file allows you to switch out your file for something else. So I tried to switch it out with the hand, and obviously it flopped because this is registered as an animation file, and the hand did not have a timeline, so the timeline did not exist, and so it did not process that the the hand file existed. So I guess that's a glitch over there already. Item number 2, open file. Super important. This will be very useful. And then open folder. So I'm going to talk about both of these. So open file is very useful. You should make use of it because, well, open folder will open up the folder that your file is contained within. So this is my folder with all of my exports and screenshots for my written tutorial for this demo. And I threw it all in the same folder, and you can tell that this is a giant mess to work with. It is difficult to find your files. So I will go ahead and select all of the relevant working files right here. So this will lead into the next thing later with file organization. So there should be about 10. Yep, there's 10 files. These are all of the relevant files within this larger nested animation thing. So yes, folder, open file. So if your folder is extremely messy, make sure that your main working file is easily accessible, so you can easily find it. As long as you can easily find it, there is probably not going to be too big of an issue, because, well, you can select your file object and then go to open file, and then you'll open up your file. So if you need to edit it, it'll be fairly easy to access. But it is strongly recommended that you actually have a dedicated folder and that is easy to access. So recommendation 1, create an assets folder and actually store a bunch of stuff and organize it if you are planning on reusing your assets. So let's go back to these file options. So update file object. So I will talk about this along with having all of these files open. So something important to take a note of with these nested files and and nested animations. So I have changed this snowflake to a different color at the very base. One step up in our file organization, this change has not been updated. Why? Obviously, because we did not save the change, so it did not update. But there's also this option here, update file object. So it will take whatever is currently in your file, and if it is open, and take whatever is currently present within your file and update it in your live file. So here we have update. All right, I'm going to undo all of that right now because there is something else to take note of with update file. All right, so I've undid all of that and made sure to save, so you can see that there's no changes anywhere. All right, change this file to red. This file, we're skipping that. We're not updating it right now. Update file object. Update file object. For some reason or another, it's not updating. So I've had mixed results. So based on what we've seen, this does not skip over, different levels of management. So you would need to go through all of these and actually update them all manually. All right. So another item to take note of is we have all of these files open right now. So I'm going to change this. All of these are red. Snowflake currently, yes. So I'm going to change this back to black. And we'll save these to make sure that you can see that there are no changes, supposedly. All right, so changed it to black. There is now a change here with the file. This is not you saw earlier that just changing the information is not going to update automatically for the next level up. So I'm going to save this change right here. So saved. Okay. You can see here there's a little dot to say there's unsafe changes, and you can see that Snowflake changed from red to black. And yeah, that's the important part of having all of your relevant working files open, so you can update all of these. So all of these changes will update properly and update live. So you can go through and make sure all of the changes are indeed properly saved along the entire string. So that is our file object organization. And then obviously we should talk about file organization itself later, which we will actually do right now because we're more or less done talking about the basic housekeeping aspects of this particular file. So when you create nested animation, you're more likely than not, you're going to generate a number of file objects. So you will want to organize your files properly by having a dedicated folder for your files. Obviously, if you're doing something like utilizing an assets library folder, you'd be saving your assets in there and then referencing it in a different file in a different location, maybe. So you would just basically, if you're a single person working on animation and don't need to send off your working file to someone else, assets library, strongly recommend creating that and using that, just referencing out of there. If not, create a dedicated folder, keep all your files within that folder. This is important if you need to send off your working file to a client or something. So file organization. Obviously, so I'm going to talk about a little about actually doing work for a client to some degree. So I don't really have too much experience myself, but from what I have read, if you're doing an animation, you should only be sending off the animation to your client unless they have specifically requested for the working file itself. And if they have requested for the working file itself, that should be a separate charge from just the animation itself. Well, obviously, because if you're doing animation work for a client, you have a bunch of assets that you've made yourself, and now that you've handed off your working file, you've given them more or less free access to all of your assets, whether or not they have permission to use it, and they can basically just take all of those and do whatever. So it's a security thing to some degree for, money and money purposes, I guess. Sorry, my brain's kind of short-circuiting. Not processing information. Not processing vocabulary very well. Alright, so folder organization, file. So you have two options for creating your animation file. You can, well, generally two. You can use the other ones if you want to mess around with them, but illustration file and create moving illustration. This will automatically generate a timeline for you to work with. If not, you can just create a static illustration and then go into your timeline panel and create a new timeline, or go to animation, timeline, new timeline. So timeline settings, we'll just go ahead and go with that. So we'll just leave this file for now. We'll return to this in a bit, but we'll go ahead and save this for now. So I am going to animate the snowflake in this file. later, so we'll go ahead with that. Other method, animation folder, not animation folder, animation file. So some people will not like using manage files using folders. For this particular work, I strongly recommend using this, manage files using folders. This will create an organization that is similar to when you're making a multi-page comic. But instead of the page, but it will, I don't believe it'll create multiple pages, it'll create like one page. And then it'll create one page, and the one page will actually have a timeline on it. So we'll go ahead and leave these, change your file settings to whatever you want for your purposes. Obviously, they're default settings. These are fairly good. 1920 by 1080 is probably what you're going to want to work with generally, the setting. You may or may not change your resolution DPI depending on what's up, but yes, this would be the recommended setting for animations. I don't know what I had before. Oh. I want to work with the square, so I'm just going to set that over there. All right. Go ahead and generate our file. And then you'll see that this is the same as a multi-page comic. All right, so this is our file. We have to open it up because it's they're organizing our files as if it's a comic for some reason or another. So move this over here and then shrink down this window. Hello? My computer is lagging. I'm sorry. Oh, wait, what? Oh, no, I was hitting the wrong buttons. Wrong keys. My bad. My brain's dead. Alright, so first things first. Animation folder. Incredibly useful. Unfortunately we're working with keyframes, and for our particular animation we will not be utilizing the animation folder at all. So go ahead and delete that for organization's sake. So there are two methods for drawing our magic circle animation. So method one is to draw everything within our working document. This is recommended for if you have multiple pieces that you need to have fit precisely with one another, drawing it all in the same document and then converting them to file objects. So we'll just go ahead and draw some sloppy design. Before you saw my animation with three gears that are all connected to each other, I'm going to skip that. I'm sorry. I'm just going to draw two because you will get the general idea with two, and it's just more work and time for an already very long tutorial. I'll go with the snowflake. I'll go ahead and make another snowflake animation because, well, it's the same idea. And unfortunately, I will be skipping the clock animation. This will basically be the same ideas as the snowflake animation itself. So that's why I'm omitting it. Unfortunate. I don't want to keep you here way longer than I should. So this is our basic sketch for design. It'll be ugly. I'm sorry. So, all right. So, option 1, draw all of your layers, all of your files within the working file. So to draw the circle, how should I draw it? So we have the special ruler, special ruler, concentric circle, and then this will, if you hold down shift, you can drag it out and it'll be a perfect circle. And then this little thing is to move it around. These two are to rotate, and these will change the width and height of the circle. So it doesn't really matter too much about how big the concentric ruler is made. The big point is that you can find your ruler, because it doesn't matter where you draw, you'll be creating perfectly round circles around the center point regardless. All that matters is position is correct, and all that matters is that the position is correct and that your aspect ratio is how it should be. So you also have this keep aspect ratio option to manage your aspect ratio when creating your ruler. So this will be useful for drawing out our circle design if you need to have perfectly round circles without too much variance. Other thing that is useful is the Symmetry Ruler. So these are basically things that have been covered in a few other tutorials on ClipStudio tips. So I strongly recommend going on there and having a look around, because there are a lot of very good resources. So Symmetry Ruler, these are for other designs. So I will go ahead and create that. Trying to line it up. So right now I have both the rulers active. So that's why I'm only able to draw circles. I will select the concentric circle ruler. Hello. Don't disappear on me. Alright. There's little diamond thing here. You can select it to disable the ruler, and then now you can do whatever. Alright, so I guess I'll do the lazy method and just draw all the designs and have everything just overlap each other. So, oops. I'm just scribbling stuff. So say that's our circle for our base circle. And then we'll just go ahead and we'll just lay everything else on top and sort it out later, because, well, the important part is animating. We wanted 2 gears. So to create a gear, you want to create a ruler, Symmetry Ruler. I guess I'll go with go with 12 symmetry lines. And then concentric circle, special ruler, concentric circle. And then it does not need to be centered, but if you are extremely OCD, you can do this. Zoom in very close with the concentric circle ruler, hold down shift, reposition, realign, make sure it's not some half pixel off. So this plus sign movement will only move along the axis. Please do not do this. It's a waste of time to get that precise. But yes, concentric ruler, concentric circle ruler, and symmetry ruler. When for drawing gears, you want to make sure your symmetrical ruler does not have line symmetry. If you have line symmetry, that is for, it will mirror itself over the axis. And if you're drawing gears, this will effectively have the number of teeth you're able to draw. Your maximum number of symmetry lines is 16, and that's already a pretty small number, if I may be blunt, for when you're drawing gears. You can draw more than 16 teeth. The issue is you will not be able to use prime numbers because, well, they will be in multiples of at least 2 or 3. So right now this was like, what, 12 symmetry lines, so there should be some 24 teeth if I went through and actually drew everything. So that's how it would be. Let's go ahead and just draw in our gear really quickly. And then disable the concentric circle ruler. Select, disable, oh, whoops, I disabled the wrong one. Concentric rulers disabled. Alright. So this is a very sloppy gear. I'm sorry. This will take way too long if I try to draw it really nice and pretty. Or just scribble something in. So there's a lot of other little details to go over for this animation thing. But it will make this tutorial run for way, way, way longer than it should. So I'm going to rotate this gear so I can position the next gear a bit more easily. So, alright, we have one gear. Alright, so what we should do is, honestly, draw out this little point. This will serve as a reference point for when you need to line up your next symmetry ruler for your next gear. So, I'm not sure, I should have it. Let's have it be a bit smaller. So you can start off with using the center point and then draw out to the middle point. So this will determine your angle, the angle of your symmetry ruler. So along this axis, select the ruler, move it over, make sure that this line is overlapping, position, intersecting with that, not position it so it is approximately center to where it should be. And then you can go ahead and draw. So I will change the color to blue. You decrease the opacity of this sketch. All right, so I'm going to skip the concentric circle ruler now because it's going to take a bit more time to set up. But yes, if you want to be more precise with all of this, for the animation, if you want to have your animation be a lot cleaner, you should probably study up a little bit on engineering and math and all sorts of fun stuff. So that's if you want to be very precise. Yeah, some people choose to be artists because they don't want to deal with math, but I'm sorry. There is no escape. But yes, if you want to be super precise, yes, you'll probably need to study up on engineering and go through the whole thing with design and figure out, oh hey, there's 30 scabs, you need to do X, Y, Z. Thankfully, this animation, we can cut corners. It's okay if the teeth kind of clip through each other just a little bit while they're turning. So thankfully, we are going to be lazy and have both of the gears be the same exact color. So if there is a little bit of clipping at the edges, people won't really notice too much. And also, if your gears are spinning fast enough, people won't notice any either. The only issue is if you're zooming in very close to the teeth and having the teeth spin very slowly, that's when people will notice, and that's when you should worry about design. Otherwise, who cares? Unless you're super OCD, in which that's just that's a terrible idea. So we'll go ahead and save that for now. Over gears drawn. And then we can export. Well, not export. Convert layer to file object. Convert layer to file object. So for our gears, we have selected even number teeth ratios. So, okay, I guess it's not necessarily. This may or may not work actually. So for our first selected teeth ratio, this is probably fine, honestly. These are even enough so that if you went ahead and changed this to file object, convert file object, drawing area, the teeth will probably, not the teeth, the center point of rotation will probably line up with the center of the gear properly. So if we select our gear, you can see that it's lined up properly to the center point. Oops, that should be gear 2, letter 1. That's fine. We'll just call this gear 1. And then if you chose an odd number of teeth, the center point of your gear is not going to line up perfectly with the center of your file object because, well, it wasn't perfectly symmetrical top to bottom, so it's not located at the center point of rotation wouldn't be located at the center of your gear, because different length from the top to center than the bottom to center. Okay, we have our gears. So going back to what I've mentioned before, I believe I mentioned it before, there's too many renditions. File object, open file object. Oh, right. We weren't going to animate these, were we? Okay, so these are static file objects. They've registered as static file objects. And if I add a timeline here and save it, so say I wanted to add in another animation over here. Let's go ahead and make a new layer, and then let's draw something random. Yeah, let's draw a star. Okay, really, really bad star. Enable keyframes. So keyframes, basically you register a point, you register another point, and then the program calculates the in-betweens for calculates the in-betweens for all the changes that you've made to the object, generally through scaling and all of that stuff. With Adobe Animate, they will also include vector lines, so you can transition from one point to another with the line changes, but that's a different program. And honestly, this works just fine with Clip Studio, where you utilize basic transformations. So smooth interpolation, this will allow you to have easing in and easing out. Linear interpolation will be moving at a constant rate for the entire duration of the animation. And then hold interpolation is basically it will stay the same and then suddenly jump and change to whatever you have set. I'm not going to demonstrate that, there's too much going on already. So right now, first frame, last frame, I will go ahead and go to object selection, aspect ratio. Okay, I'm gonna do a little flip over here. I'm just going to do it really quickly. So, oh no, we're going to leave that flip. Leave that for now. 240. We're going to just randomly place another linear interpolation. Oops. Hold on. For Pseudo 3D, we should actually have smooth interpolation. My bad. So keyframe there, keyframe is just to keep it consistent. And then add another keyframe. And for this keyframe, you want it to flip in the middle. So scale ratio -100. Go to the beginning. Here is our rotating, fake rotating star. Fake 3D. You can trick a few people with it to some degree, but it's not actually 3D. And then, right, save the gear. So we have change, and you can see it's static. There is no animation present because this was registered as a static file object, because if you convert a layer into a file object in the current version, which is 1.10.6, file objects will be static. If you had animation for a file object, it will kick it out as a static image and remove all animation. All animation will not exist. So to demonstrate here, this has animation, file object, convert to file object, drawing area, let's just go with that. So first off, you can see that the layer itself has now, all of its animation has now been removed. That's item 1. Open file, star, no timeline, static file object. And because file object types are basically registered upon creation of file object, and does not change. And there's a very, very clear distinction between animated and static file objects. This will and does not change. You need to re-import. You need to import your created file, your file object, and then move it into place. So this is the file object that we are supposed to do. This is our new file object. Look over here for the timeline settings. Timeline exists on this file. Timeline does not exist on this file. Okay. And then very carefully line it up and make sure it is nicely in place. Okay, that should be perfectly aligned. All right. Oh shoot, right, because we messed up our thing by removing the animation by generating the file object. So can we undo? Oh, I did save instead. Okay, so that's for proper loop. All right, so our rotating star exists here. Our rotating star now exists on this file as well. Here we go. And then we can delete this because we no longer need it. All right. That is for part 1. Gear rotations. Okay, so gear rotation. This is our working timeline. Select a gear. Huh. That is weird. Oh, right, this is a file object. And I did not enable keyframes yet. So gear number 2, enable keyframes. So a point that I need to make here with keyframes is before you mess around with keyframes, by default, the mode for keyframes will be scale and rotate. So I'm going to change this mode. So this is the editing mode for that. And do that. Okay. Enable keyframes. So you can see position, scale ratio, aspect ratio. So, and it doesn't matter what I select over here for mode, for editing mode, with the object selection for file objects prior to keyframe. So after I do some adjustment, so obviously if I do this, it should change. But I'm going to move the center of rotation and enable keyframes. And you can see that the keyframes have changed from center of rotation and the scale ratio and whatnot to top left, top right, basically the 4 quarters. So, important point. If you're doing any sort of adjustments prior to enabling keyframes for a file object, make sure you are on the proper transformation mode. For our purposes, we want scale and rotate. If you make adjustments using free transform, distort, skew, perspective at any point in time, your keyframes will automatically register to the four corners rather than center of rotation and related. May or may not change in the future. They are probably figuring things out and deciding how things should work for the program before making these types of changes. So keep that in mind. Stuff will change. Okay, enable keyframes for both of these gears because I don't think I'm doing any more work with these. So add keyframe. Oops, let's go to the beginning of the timeline. Add keyframe. Because we're doing rotating gears and we want to keep it at constant speed, we should actually be using smooth interpolation. Or not smooth interpolation, linear interpolation. So beginning of the timeline, end of the timeline. So generally if you're working with something that is not perfectly symmetrical, in which basically the pattern repeats, if you want to have a looping animation, you will want to do perfect 360-degree rotations. And if you're doing several different if you're working with several different non-symmetrical items that are rotating, and you're having them rotate at a specific ratio to each other, like these gears, if there's like another design over there or something, you will have to calculate the gear ratios, and then figure out exactly when the two gears will actually finally be in the same exact positions relative to each other after doing your entire rotation thing. So here is a very helpful tool. Yes, calculator. If you want to get very far with keyframe animation and related, I'm sorry, math is going to be involved. If you're trying to avoid math by going into art as a field of study and decided, hey, I want to do animation, I'm sorry. You should probably actually go and brush up on math, even if you hate it. This will be super important. So, what level of math? Basic algebra is required. Geometry will be incredibly helpful. You may or may not need trigonometry. Trigonometry will help in some cases, particularly if you have to work with sine, cosine, tangent, finding a distant length of sides of triangles that are not perfectly right triangles, I guess. Yeah, I believe that's right triangles with 90 degrees and all that fun stuff. That's easily resolved with the Pythagorean theorem. And sometimes you can't even use the Pythagorean theorem. So you actually need to work with sine, cosine, tangent for your calculations. So yes, that would be like the advanced geometry or basic trigonometry. And I don't want to make anyone paranoid, but in some very, very, very rare occasions, you may actually need to dive into calculus with derivatives and all of that fun stuff. I have never needed to. I have not found a need for any of that, any of the calculus items, but I have definitely found use for trigonometry. So heads up if you're getting into animation. No, it might not be required for your if you're studying animation at a school dedicated for animation or for a university or anything like that. But yeah, math is going to be incredibly useful even if it's not a requirement. Obviously, you could just avoid the type of animations that require calculations. So there is always that option as well. So right now I will be doing a full full rotation, 2 full rotations for this gear. Because well we have a star design which is not symmetrical, so we need to do full 360 rotations. So we have set that beginning, and you can see a nested star animation rotating. We want to have it do a smooth rotation, so we'll shift this keyframe onto the next frame. So for 241 will be the same exact position as frame number 1. So that will complete our rotation. Over here, this gear needs to be rotating in respect to the other gear. Yeah, I'm sorry, my brain's dead. And in order to calculate how it rotates, we need to basically count the number. So first we have the rotation angle, which was 720. So we'll go into calculator. 720 is their basic rotation angle. And then for number of gears, for this gear we'll multiply that by the number of teeth. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12? Hopefully I'm counting that right. Yeah, 12. Multiply that by 12. And then divide by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Divide by 8. So we need to have this gear rotate in the opposite direction. So right now for this gear we rotated it in a positive direction, so this one needs to rotate in a negative direction, so rotation angle negative and 1080. Oops. Negative 1080. So obviously you can see that the rotation angle, greater rotation angle, so faster speed of rotation, because the gear with fewer teeth, or yeah, fewer teeth will rotate faster than the gear with a larger number of teeth. Gears with the same number of teeth will rotate at the same speed. So now now that we have set that and we moved their keyframe over so it lines up properly, you can see that our gear animation the teeth are interacting properly and moving in line with each other at the same proper ratio. So this is for gear animation. Obviously the teeth themselves could be cleaned up if we actually change the color of the teeth. Here, you can see right here, already right here, you can see it's clipping. So yes, study engineering and all that stuff if you really want to be a OCD perfectionist and make sure your gears don't clip. Well, obviously you can just go back into the file and clean it up and erase the little parts that are clipping into each other. Right. Yeah, that's too much work for this tutorial, which which is taking forever already. So gear animation. So that was method 1. Snowflake animation. All right. So drawing a snowflake. Did I say I was going to draw a snowflake? Right. Drawing a snowflake. Line symmetry. Turn on line symmetry. Number of lines 12. So 12. So we'll generate 6 points and have things be properly symmetrical automatically, and then you have this side whatnot. So this is for a perfect snowflake. Very easy, very quick to generate a snowflake of some sort that looks fancy. Whether or not this is the snowflake that you actually want is going to be another matter entirely. You will definitely spend a bit more time than what I've just done for drawing a snowflake if you want something specific. So, snowflake. We have a timeline already because we generated that way earlier. Save. File. Import. Create file object. Oh, whoa. Wrong file. File. Import. Create file object. We can select movie file. It'll basically do the same thing for us, but it will essentially filter out all of the files that do not contain movie animation. So you can see this tutorial demo thing where I had a ton of loose screenshots. Yes, yeah, this got filtered out. Okay, so a few items here. Scale the snowflake down to size. All right, so there's a few items to take note of here. Right now we have the paper layer. We're going to disable that. Okay, so we will make it invisible on this file, but in the working file it's still present. And this is going to still be there when we update it. So, snowflake paper, delete. You are in the way. I'm sorry. Okay, so we have this. I'm going to do the lazy way. I'm going to take the lazy way out. Convert layer to file object, drawing area. Our longest point is the. Well, that's perfectly symmetrical anyway, so when we export it out, it will, as a file object with drawing area, it'll be perfectly centered for rotation. So, yes, I am lazy. Do I want to do another animation? Right. So I want to show you how I did the other animation thing. So right now this file is actually not useful. But open file. Snowflake base. Edit canvas size. our canvas is not wide enough to accommodate for this longer axle. So height 1423, and then that would be fine. Obviously, if you want to add more effects, such as a glow effect where you need to create duplicate copy of this layer and then blur it. Canvas size, make sure it's centered. Add several more pixels at a minimum. Ideally, keep it symmetrical as well. So yes, here. Snowflake base snowflake. Enable timeline. If I do not enable timeline and I re-import it, it's going to be a static animation again. So enable timeline. Okay. I want to have a basic rotation, snowflake rotation. So enable keyframe. Linear interpolation. Ideally, if you're making new timelines, that you keep them at similar stats. I'm forgetting. Similar settings, yes. Similar settings to your main working file. So if you're doing 24 frames per second animation, you should probably keep it at 24 frames per second just for convenience sake, I guess. Okay, so rotation angle. This is perfectly symmetrical at like six lines of symmetry. So 360 divided by 6 is 60 degrees. So we can do multiples of 60 degrees and it'll still look like it is rotating in a proper loop. Let's select a random number. 540, is that right? Yeah, 540 is a multiple of 60. 540. Move the keyframe over to the next frame. Play. This is fine. We will save. Okay, stop. Snowflake animation. Alright, the snowflake. Static file object. Update does not work, remember. So, file, import file object. So we saved this in a file folder up. So we're going with the snowflake. No, we are in the snowflake file. We need the snowflake base file. Okay. This one has an animation. This one does not. Delete the one without the animation. Here we go. Oh, right. And obviously, if you're importing, you should probably move to the front of the timeline so it is in place. Or you should move to the location on the timeline where you actually want your file to start. Otherwise, you'll need to do the additional step of moving your file into place. All right. File is in place. Enable keyframe. I want two different animations. So I want the I want it to basically scale across. I want to shrink and then expand. So basically do this. So that will create a pseudo 3D turn that people can track to some degree. And then I want it to also rotate. So for the pseudo 3D turn, I want smooth interpolation. keyframe at the beginning, keyframe at the end. So this will mark out the static position. I want to flip over completely twice, or I want to do the pseudo 3D rotation twice. So 240, and I want to move at a constant rate. So 240, 121. Okay, because it's 241, base frame is 1. 240 frames divided by 2, 120. And then 120 divided by 2, 60, 61. And 180, 181. So this is my position, main position. This is the rotate. So we should have, right, so we deselected keep aspect ratio. We will now invert this to negative. So negative 100. This is back to normal position. This is reversed. Negative 100. This is back to normal. Okay, so we have this. Nice animation, yes. Okay, so now I want to do another rotation on top of that. So we can either go back to the main file and toss in the rotation animation. So you can see there. So we can throw in our rotation animation here. Enable keyframe and all of that. So I will go ahead and not do that. I'll go ahead and come back here. And because we have all these keyframes already, we'll isolate the rotation because that's what we want to do. We want to add a rotation. So we have these excess keyframes. We want to do a smooth rotation all the way through, and we want to make sure that they are all not on smooth interpolation. We want it to be all linear interpolation. So grab all of these, delete. Go to front of timeline, move to linear interpolation. I feel like I messed up somewhere with words I used. These are proper steps, okay? I swear. Alright, so this is the same place as the last keyframe. So over here. So just moving into a graph editor was just to delete all of that. And then afterwards you can come back and specifically choose the keyframe. Or you can go through each keyframe and manually delete all of them by unchecking it and checking the box for keyframes. Alright, so ending keyframe. Front keyframe is 0. Interpolation. Rotation angle. What should a rotation angle be? Right, we need to have it at multiples of, I think we would need at multiples of 360. I'm not 100% sure. Probably does need to be multiples of 360. We'll just go with 360. No, let's go 720. I forget what we're doing. All right, 720, and then shift the keyframe over so it onto the following 241 to have it properly rotate or properly loop. So this is our final animation. For Snowflake, save, and then go back to the other one. File, save. So let's see. Unfortunately, there's these things with file objects where you... Okay, so the thing with these is you can adjust layer color. So this is super handy. This is why I use... This is why I draw with black. Black layers. Because you, if these are white, then it would stay white when I do layer color. But if it's black, it will be perfectly whatever I choose the layer color to be. So that's why I use black for these layers. Just side tangent note. Oops. But if I wanted to do border effects, oh hey, that one's actually working nicely for some reason. Thickness of edges. All right, well, just go ahead and use this, honestly. So I wasn't too sure, but some of these have a bit of an issue where it will go okay. Well, yeah, I will just go ahead and reference your frame instead of the pixel data because these are ClipStudioPaint files. I guess it's able to reference the pixel data as long as it's not too complicated. So we'll just go ahead and utilize these options. So obviously it's going to lag even more. Because we're going to do that, and then we're going to turn this opacity on back up so you can actually see the animations on top of the very, very poorly drawn magic circle that I've not bothered to clean up. All right. Another thing I needed to cover. It was the awkward glitch. I guess I'll go ahead and demonstrate that right now. So, all right. So let's see. I'm going to make space with these gears. So in my original file that I showed you guys at the start, this is what I did to move these around. So I put them in a folder. I enabled keyframes to make sure that these are stuck together. And then I selected the folder and then I moved it. Make sure the keyframes are like, you know. You can use this for animating as well. So say, hey, I want another animation here. So you can see the gears moving. So yes, you can do very complicated gear animations utilizing the um, utilizing the folder with keyframes. Normal folder. Important tool. But yes, we wanted to make space for our very sloppy glitch snowflake. So this may or may not happen. Import file object. Snowflake base. We have the snowflake base. And then we want to shrink it all the way back down. Um, Border effect. Enable keyframes. And we'll basically, we will basically create the same animation as we did earlier with the add keyframe start, add keyframe end. Where was I going with this? Oh, that might cause some issues. Not sure. Oh well, we'll just go ahead and try. Rotation angle, it was, we did 720? 720 rotation angle, okay. Rotation angle is set. Smooth interpolation. Scale ratio, scale ratio. Scale ratio, scale ratio. Just a different method of creating all these. Okay, keyframe. In theory, this should work properly. This might not align properly. Just saying, do not repeat this if it fails. Do not copy. All right. Scale ratio, 120. We're going with the width, height. Oops. Undo the aspect ratio. 80. Okay. Back there. Play. These two should, in theory, be the same exact animation. Yeah, the scale might be a little off, but same animation. More or less. Better or worse. Okay. All right. Now we will go through with the wow, what happened there? Oh, it's because I put in the border effect, and the border effect is making the gears clip into each other. So yeah, I'm being lazy, so ideally you don't want to do this to make your gears stand out. You actually properly draw the magic circle so there's space. New animation layer, 2D camera folder. Alright, so 2D camera folder. Put all of your files into the 2D camera folder. All your layers, relevant layers. So here's our 2D camera folder. Let's start. No animation. So big difference between the 2D camera folder and a regular folder with keyframes enabled. Camera folder does not require you to enable keyframes. That means whatever pixel data is within the camera folder, as long as it doesn't have enable keyframe for the layer itself, you can still paint and edit the layer. Big difference number one. If you are using a folder and enable keyframes for the folder itself, all of the data within it, all of the pixel data within it for, drawing and all that. If you're doing like opacity, you can still modify and edit that. And if you're doing certain correction layers, you can edit some settings for that as well. But yes, actual drawing data you cannot modify with a folder with enable keyframes. That's big difference number one. Big difference number two is I've already covered somewhat with the beginning, where your camera may or may not represent what is seen. May or may not represent your final product. This is because of framing. So camera shrink. Okay, actually we'll go ahead with copying what we have had at the start with the circle. with the rotation. CAD, this one was rotation angle negative 360, not symmetrical. So negative 360, shift this over. Oops, shift that over as well. So we do not have enable camera. Animation, playback setting, render 2D camera. Okay, so yes, this is the exact glitch bug that I was talking about. So you can see one of the snowflakes is flying everywhere. See here, there, there. This snowflake is flying everywhere. This one, there is a very awkward interaction with the camera folder and keyframes on file objects with the scale ratio currently. So they will probably fix this. Um, they're probably working on it. I don't know if it's reported. It probably is. But yeah, that's basically why I needed to go through with the extra steps of nesting the 3D rotation, pseudo 3D turn, so it didn't interfere with the camera. All right, so back to the camera animation. So for actual camera work, we would do something like this. I want to focus on this gear, and then when we rotate, when we're zooming out, to zoom out to like all the other stuff. I think I have the oh right. Oh, it's because of the rotation. Right, so I would have another keyframe somewhere. So I can do something like that. Zoom out first and then go into the whole rotation aspect. So that is an option for making use of the camera. So hey, there's a little snippet of camera work. I believe that more or less covers it. Oh, I guess I did mess up the keyframes a little bit, so oops. Right. Something else I want to demonstrate, or something else that I mentioned in my written tutorial, if you want to go into the links at the bottom and check it out. One of the things that this I mentioned was the pseudo 3D effect. So we have a pseudo 3D effect on that snowflake over there. We will go ahead and move all of these layers into here, enable keyframe, and then, oh, I forgot I can't do that. because of different file versions. So, I know. New file. Something to note. I forgot with the camera. Um, if you have a 2D camera and you on a file and you import the file into another file, your 2D camera will not render. So let's go back to this. We have the 2D camera. The 2D camera animation does exist. We can see that it renders. We have enabled rendering for this timeline thing. Yes. Page shift 2. It should be updated. Play. There is no 2D camera. 2D camera does not exist. So if you wanted that whole zooming out animation, you would have needed to place the animation within a regular folder and then enable keyframing and then, you know, have it move in essentially the same manner by zooming the folder in or out. So we're going to disable the animation in a playback setting. We are going to disable the 2D camera rendering on playback. Okay. So folder, this is our folder. We will do enable a keyframe, add a keyframe, add a keyframe. End keyframe is what we want to see at the end. We want it in between or something. So first keyframe, zoom in. Wow, what is going on? Oh, I did not move my files. I did not move the contents into the folder. All right, here we go. Folder is selected. Keyframe. Boom. What you see is what you get. And then we go to the end and do a rotation of, I don't know. So yeah, there. And we'll update that file. So here we have the animation. We're going to undo that because that wasn't exactly what I was going to show you. Oh wait, that was what I was going to show you. I was going to show you the how to get that type of an animation there on because the 2D camera does not function. All right, so over here I was going to demonstrate the pseudo 3D effect, basically glitching out because you try to layer pseudo 3D effects. So instead of scale and rotate, we will change this to retransform. I'm not sure what's going on. Oh, right, file is broken-ish. So let's move these all back into a camera folder. Save. Update. Okay, it is playing. It's just super, super slow. But you can see the snowflake, and it is basically crushed. You can barely. You don't really see a 3D animation here. It does not function. It does not function as it should, or as I think it should anyway. So it kind of works, kind of doesn't. So yeah, I believe that should be it for this whole nested animation tutorial. And hopefully you have learned something from this extremely lengthy thing. But yes. Thank you for watching, and hope to maybe see you around if I make another tutorial. Bye bye.